John Robinson. When you come to see the Irish Seaboard at this pleasure, boys, you know you're going to get the message. You know what you're going to get. So there's no point denying it after the fact. So, but if there's anybody in the DUP, will not tell on you tonight. In recent days, you'll have seen that the DUP leadership have spoke about dividing unionism. And nobody wants to see a divided unionism, but I find that very hard to reconcile with Sir Geoffrey Donaldson's attack on any principled unionist who stood up against the deal which he sought to put forward. He sought to shout down everybody and anybody in an effort to sell his deal from the very outset. It wasn't us that began attacking the DUP or those who supported the deal. Instead, those who were advocating the deal as a way of setting their narrative began by attacking anybody else as dead-end unionists. And it is of note that on the day that the DUP went back to Stormont to implement the Irish Sea border, to accept the protocol, to enthrone Sinn Féin, IRA and government, the only person that any DUP MLA attacked was this man. The only person they could criticise and attack was Jim Allister. They didn't say anything to the IRA who were lying in the corridors. They didn't say anything for the victims of the IRA. They didn't say anything for people who are still opposed to the protocol. All they could do was attack Jim Allister. So when Geoffrey talks about dividing unionism and the DUP press office put out statements about dividing unionism, I think the DUP need to look a lot closer to home. And you see, it isn't that easy for Geoffrey for everybody to simply go along with this, because whereas Mr. Seismic and Paul Gibbon may well be dancing a nice Irish tune, even members of their own party aren't playing along with this, and nor will many people within the unionist and loyalist community. And meetings like this are important because it's an opportunity to spread the message. And we're not hiding. What I'm going to say to you tonight, what Jim's going to say to you, is we'll sit here all night and take questions from anybody. Well, if anybody wants to come along, I'm sure Jim wouldn't refuse anybody from the DUP who wants to come in the door, come up here and tell you all why we're wrong and why what we're saying is inaccurate and false and untrue and nonsense. But as of yet, unfortunately, nobody has decided to come along and take up that challenge. So, you've all been misled. There's no question about that, and better than that, you have all been lied to. What you have been told by the DUP is simply not true, and I'm going to explain why it's not true. And if anybody wants to ask the DUP to challenge that or to set out their position, then there's nobody would wish them to do so more than me. I wish Geoffrey Donaldson was here tonight so he could have this debate in front of all of you people and everybody else, but of course he's not, and he won't come, because he has no answer to these points. So you will all made 7 key promises, the 7 key tests, and there was 7 key lies told. So tonight I'm going to very quickly tell you 7 key truths. The first is this: the Irish Sea border remains. It has a soft version called the Green Lane, and it has a hard version called the Red Lane. And all goods by default start off being caught in the Red Lane. That is a full EU customs border between our country, down the middle of our country, between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. That is the default starting position. If you want to benefit from the lesser Irish Sea border, a little lesser checks, you have to apply for authorisation for customs purposes. And we can set all this out for you, exactly what it's in a joint committee decision 01/2023. Go and look it up, Article 7 to Article 14. It's all set out in that decision what you have to do to trade in your own country. Now, if somebody said to you, you are invited to the Orange Hall, you can come into the Orange Hall, but you have to apply for permission at the bottom of the stairs, you have to apply for permission to sit down on a seat, then you wouldn't have unfettered access to the Orange Hall, would you? So what the DUP say in that regard is simply untrue. The Acts of Union, which we were told, yous were told, was the first of the DUP's 7 key tests, remains subjugated and in suspension. Nothing has changed in regards to the damage of the Act of Union, other than Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has changed his view about what that test ought to mean. And you see, Jeffrey stood up and he started talking about tariffs on Bushmills whisky. That if we achieve what we all set out to achieve, you might have to pay £3 more on Bushmills whisky. Something that was done away with in 1879. But that was Jeffrey's big sale to the Unionist people. If we achieve what we set out to achieve, you'll have tariffs on Bushmills whisky, notwithstanding that is nonsense. And he said this, for those who would talk about restoring the active union, these people are talking nonsense. They don't know their history, they don't know their facts. Then one goes on to the DUP's own YouTube channel, 21st of July 2021. Who do we have standing in Parliament calling on the Prime Minister to fully restore the Acts of Union? None other than Sir Geoffrey Donaldson himself. So by his own yardstick, Geoffrey Donaldson was talking nonsense for all of those years whenever he was preaching those tests. The third issue is EU law remains supreme in Northern Ireland. There's absolutely no question about that. Whatever anybody's view is on the Legacy Act, whether you like it or dislike it, or you're opposed to it, or whatever view you take on it, it's an act of the Sovereign Parliament. It was cut down by EU law. So anybody that says EU law is not supreme, it's more supreme now than it even was when we're in the European Union. A very experienced legal commentator called Tom Hickman, a professor of constitutional law from England, wrote a very interesting article. You can find it in social media. The seat's up here at the front if anyone wants to come and get a seat. Don't be shy. You're not in the DUP, are you? Don't worry, we're not going to tell on you. We're not going to tell. We'll not tell Jeffrey. So and Professor Hickman set out. You're very welcome. Set out in his very interesting article that even when we were in the European Union, there was never a disapplication of an act of Parliament to the same extent by which it happened by the Legacy Act, by Article 2 of the Protocol. And I'm sure Jim will maybe say a bit more about this, but we are subject to hundreds and hundreds of areas of EU law listed in Annex 2 in the Protocol. If we brought it along with us tonight, it would fill this table. That's how much your lives are governed by the European Union, not UK law. The fourth key truth is this nonsense that the Stormont Blake is a veto on EU law. No, it isn't. Number one, the Stormont Blake doesn't even catch all of the EU law, which continues to apply. There's big areas of excluded. Number two, the EU law which applies now continues to apply. Number three, even if the Blake is pulled, even if the government, who Jeffrey says we have to go back because we can't trust, agrees to play along and go to the EU, you then have to seek the EU's permission to disapply the Act. And if the EU say no, it goes to international arbitration. So the sovereign UK Parliament can't even decide to stop the EU law, even if the Stormont Blake is pulled. So even if the Stormont Blake is pulled, even if the UK government say we agree, even if the UK Parliament said we agreed, short of changing the whole protocol and Windsor framework as it is now, that EU law couldn't be stopped if there's an international arbitration. And what the DUP don't tell you is, when you pull the brake to stop the amended EU law, the EU law which applies now continues to apply. So you could end up in a situation where the brake is pulled, you're subject to the EU law as it applies now, but the EU has changed the law. Great Britain has a different law. So Northern Ireland is in this place where you're not following the EU law as it is now. You're not following UK law. You're in a strange trivergence, as it's been called, situation. Now the DUP says, oh, that's unlikely to happen. I mean, a border in the Irish Sea was unlikely to happen, but here's how we are. Number 5, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson told you all, and listen back to him, Good Morning Ulster, these are his own words, open quotes, he said, there will be 0 checks and 0 customs paperwork for goods destined for Northern Ireland. That is simply a lie. That is untrue. It was untrue when he said it. It's untrue now, and it will be untrue in the future. And he promised legislation on this within a week or two when he was on the Nolan show. No legislation has appeared, and as the Northern Ireland Office confirmed to Carla Lockhart in a question at the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, nor is any legislation coming to deal with that issue. So because the vast majority of goods start in the red lane and will continue in that red lane via the full EU customs border. It doesn't it doesn't even matter if we did have a lane in which some goods could move freely, because many destined for Northern Ireland will still be subject to the full EU customs law, and none of that has been changed by Jeffrey Donaldson's deal. Checks, customs paperwork continues. Number 6, the all-island economy, which they said they had removed. They had abolished. Jeffrey, you may have seen him on the football pitch, limbering up on his own in the stadium. I think it was down at Ballymacash. He done a nice wee video. He was doing all of that. I mean, I think Jeffrey's the only man in history to put the ball in his own net, run away celebrating, and wonder why the fans are booing him. But there we are. But he said, we have abolished the all-island economy. I mean, not even his own command paper made that claim. Even in the command paper, it promised legislation at a future date to take the duty out of the Withdrawal Act. No date as to when the legislation is. No outline of when it's going to come. Just at a future date. So they haven't abolished anything. They've secured a promise in the future to maybe have a look at it. Untrue. And as Jim pointed out, well, there's a few seats up here, big man, you want to see? In the Assembly, we had the Sinn Féin Economy Minister talking about the all-island economy. Only one man in the Assembly took them up and challenged him. It was Jim Allister. Not a single DUP MLA jumped up and said, hold on, safeguarding the Union, there is no all-island economy. No, they played along. They left it to this man, and I think probably on the same day, probably attacked him again. Maybe Mr. Seismic was going to clean his clock from the I think he'd have beat him in a fight, Jim, to be honest. Was going to clean his clock from give it to Jim, from the Speaker's chair. So again, untrue. And finally, Northern Ireland remains European Union territory. It's in something called, and if you want to bore yourself and go and look at this, type it into Google, EU Regulation 2017-625 and the Official Controls Regulations 2023. It specifies, and the judgment of Mr. Justice Copeland in the Edwin Poots Post case, when Edwin decided he was going to try and stop checks, or pretend he was going to try and stop checks, you are legally obligated, if you're in the Assembly, if you're in the Executive, you have a legal obligation to implement the Irish Sea border and implement the checks, and nothing of that has changed. So as I said, if Sir Jeffrey or anybody else wants to contest any of those claims, I'm happy to have the debate anytime, any place. The DUP can facilitate it. We aren't running away, and we haven't from the start. So when you read things in newspapers about us dividing unionism and we don't want to have a debate, no, I certainly speak for myself, and I would be surprised if Jim wasn't the same. No, we'll have a debate with anybody. Bring it on. We're not running away from the DUP. I certainly want one of them to come up and sit at this table and take me on what I've said. But if they can't, well, that tells you all you need to know. And just finally, on this segment, I just do want to address what Sammy Wilson said today. And Sammy has said some good things on about the surrendering the union deal. But these aren't TUV rallies. These are anti-Irish Sea border rallies. The fact that the only party with a coherent, consistent position at the moment on the Irish Sea border is the TUV is hardly their fault, nor anybody else's. But believe you me, if there was a DUP MP who wanted to come and sit here tonight, I would happily stand at a rally with him, and I'm sure so would Jim, and so would anybody else who wanted to oppose the Irish Sea border. So this is not about any political party. This is about the cause of unionism. And you know, there may well be a good point in what Sammy says in terms of they need to win the fight within their own party, and I hope they do win the fight within their own party, and they continue that fight. But the problem is, it's like playing chess with a pigeon, because how do you have a reasoned argument within your own party when the people you're arguing against just keep saying black is white? And no matter how much the evidence is overwhelming, no matter what you can see before your very eyes, they just keep saying the Irish Sea border is gone. And they won't even engage with anybody else. So whether Sammy will have any success in that, I don't know. But as I said at the start, I want to see a united unionism. I want to see us all working together for the betterment of the union. I don't think there's anybody to dispute that. But the basis of that unity was in a joint declaration signed by the leaders of every unionist party and the Orange Order, who facilitated it on Ulster Day 2021, and that set out a position which all of loyalism, every political unionist party, the Orange Order, the Apprentice Boys, everybody endorsed that position. That was the covenant, as you, if we put it that way, in terms of our opposition. That is what the DUP's manifesto was based on. That's what they got a mandate on, and it's not any of us who have changed. It's the DUP who have changed and moved away from their commitments. So if you want to have unity, you've got to build it on a foundation of truth. You can't build unity on a foundation of telling people lies. And you know what? I wouldn't have agreed with it. I would have opposed it. But there may well have been a meritorious case for somebody to come along and say, look, do you know what? We've made some progress. We can't get much more at this time. We feel we should go back, make the fight from within Stormont, and here's how we're going to keep fighting. I mean, I wouldn't have agreed with that. I would have opposed that. But I would have at least been able to honestly disagree with that as a meritorious, honest position. But I cannot. There can be no honest disagreement between the truth and a lie. You can't honestly disagree by saying, because the Irish Sea Border is still there, well, it's not. So somebody's right and somebody's wrong. And what we are trying to do, and what these meetings are trying to do, is take people to the truth. Now finally, I'm going to lighten the mood tonight. You will be all pleased to know. Anybody who was a Valley player, Jim told a fantastic story, which I hope he'll repeat at his party conference. It was phenomenal humour about Jeffrey. So I've decided to end tonight with a short poem to liven things up a bit, which I don't know if I'm going to end up with Shakespeare or not, but we'll have a go. So here we go. Sir Geoffrey and Gavin, the negotiating team, over in London, living the dream. The principals for sale and the union too. Implementers of the sea border, they've all tried to fool you. But we've pretended we've principles, now we've nowhere to go. Och, never worry about that, said the NIO. We'll just paint the sea border red, white and blue. We'll change the Green Lane's name, we'll call it something new. Out with the all-island economy, we'll say we'll legislate. But here's the trick, we'll not say which date. Tell them next month, next week or next year. Doesn't really matter, because the Conservatives won't be here. Then on to the checks, just tell them it's zero. They'll never notice, you'll be wee Geoffrey the hero. And here is the best bit, then we'll all have a good laugh. We'll be manning that non-existent sea border with over 150 staff. So forget about platforms with Jamie and Jim, just spoof to your people, sure you're all pretty dim. Never mind marching and donning your sash, we'll just spoof on the sea border, we'll give you billions in cash. And then for your next move, and this will be funny, just pretend you've still got principles and then say it's not about money. We'll do talks up at Tillsborough, it's not that tardy. You and Gavin can walk in like Laurel and Hardy. Och, I couldn't do that, that would be wild. But Gavin will take me by the hand, I'll look like a child. And just go on to Nolan, and rant and rave, tell Sammy and Nigel, you've got to behave. But we'll get you new allies. They'll help make the case. You can have another secret meeting with Doug Beattie at a military base. And you and Doug can embark on a sweet Irish dance. Now you've stolen his clothes, you're even wearing his pants. And Doug said to Geoffrey, well, I'll be your defender. Welcome aboard, the SS Surrender. We'll sail off together, no more red, white and blue. Off to the Lords, that is the place for you. Geoffrey's excited, that will be the day, but he's no mates in the Lords either, except old Willie Hay. He hasn't yet realised that things are so dire, even Big Gavin, he's now wearing a wire. And the wire story is funny, but the truth I can't tell. Those DUP officers shouting, their soul they won't sell. So cut off the signals, Sir Geoffrey did scream, this is my moment, this is my dream. Fix it, John Robinson, it's you I anoint. Please put the Wi-Fi back on, I've lost my PowerPoint. So 20 minutes later, the wire is still live. John Robinson is leaving to consult MI5. The DUP are raging, they're blaming PSNI, CPU. Don't be blaming us, they say to Timmy Johnson, we think it's you. So Geoffrey's doing a press conference, he's very cross. I am the leader, I am the boss. My deal is amazing, no one can challenge me. Never mind the former Attorney General, John Larkin, KC. The law doesn't matter, nor do the facts. The old dead-end unionists just keep launching our attacks. But Jeffrey, it's us who is spoofing. What can we say? Och, just keep telling them the Irish sea border's gone away. But Jeffrey, come on, that's simply a spoof. Och, I don't know, I'm just making all this up on the hoof. Say that they're all idiots for the acts of union wanting to the store. But Jeffrey, you've got a problem. You said that before. Then Jeffrey turns furious. He must make a call. Paul Girvan MP is in Ballyclare Orange Hall. The Irish encasement and now GAA. Whatever next, gets worse by the day. Off to America, that's where they've gone. No doubt dressing up as a DUP leprechaun. But we are still here, and we're still standing strong. The truth will come out, and it won't take long. So dear friends of Ulster, we are making our stand for the red, white and blue, and Ulster's red hand. So come and stand with us, stand for what's right, for the love of your country, join in the fight. So stand here with us, and make some noise with me. No EU in Ulster, and no border in the sea. Thank you very much.